Hello dear students, welcome to the learning resources on making schools inclusive, and in this particular section we will be talking about schools preparedness for inclusion. That means how can a school prepare itself for making it an inclusive institution. The learning outcomes for this particular section are: state different requirements for a school in order to be an inclusive school, discuss the various infrastructural requirements for inclusion, elaborate upon the various technological requirements for inclusion, enumerate various measures the school must take to prepare its teachers, students, administrators, and support staff to make school a safe place for all the students. Now, if when we are talking about a school's preparedness for inclusion, we can talk about on 4 different parameters or 4 different pillars, that is the infrastructural requirements, the technological requirements, pedagogical and attitudinal preparedness, and support services. Now, first of all, we will talk about the infrastructural requirements. That means what kind of an infrastructure should a school have in order to make it an inclusive institution. So, we will be talking about first of all the school building. So, what should be there in a school's building? First of all, ramps should be there wherever there are stairs. The school has, in order to be an accessible place for all students or children, it has to make sure that every nook and corner of the school is accessible. So, it either lifts should be there or ramps should be there wherever stairs are there. So, this is something which is very important. Guide blocks and specific signs for visually impaired students. So, students who are visually impaired or with very low vision, they should have a guide blocks where the students can touch and feel and they can move to the places where they would want to go, or specific signs. Visual signs for the hearing impaired students should be there. A student who is not able to hear, so visual signs for denoting various places. So, it has to be a well marked place. Broad passages and corridors for physically disabled students. Say if there are students who are moving around on wheelchairs, or there are other students who who do not want to be touched or like to be touched. So, the passages and the staircases and corridors, they have to be broad. Arrangement of furniture should be hassle free. It shouldn't be a too cluttered kind of an arrangement where it becomes difficult for wheelchair bound students to be moving around. So, arrangement of furniture has to be hassle free, and proper systematic arrangement needs to be there. It shouldn't be like a chair is there which can be which is put somewhere in the corridor or somewhere in the aisle, etc. Adequate lighting and good lighting should be there, so that even students who have any kind of sight problems, or they are short sightedness, or any kind of you can say eyesight problems, they do not have they don't feel any problem. Access to sinks and washrooms and restrooms should be there for all students. So, and special provision for washrooms for disabled, or disabled friendly washrooms should also be there, and which should be accessible for all. Disabled friendly washrooms that I was talking about. Then access to other parts of the schools like library, cafeteria, drinking water dispensary, playgrounds, laboratories, everything, all of these different portions should be smooth. That means they should be well connected by where every person can go, including the people who are bound on a wheelchair. Accessible school transport, that means buses, etc., should be disabled friendly with low flooring and with ramps, wherein a student who is bound on the wheelchair can also get in. Hostels also should be accessible in the way that school buildings should be accessible. There should be well organized classrooms for children with autism. So, the arrangement of classrooms should be very systematic. It shouldn't be like that, say if class 6A, 6B, 6C, they are together and then D is somewhere else and E is on a different floor. It shouldn't be like that. It becomes quite chaotic for children who may have any kind of, say, intellectual deficiency is there, or say autism is there. So, things like those should be taken care of, that it should be a very systematic class 6 followed by class 7 and all its sections, followed by class 8, and there should be some systematic way in which the classes are arranged on floors. Less distractions for students with ADHD. So, children who have ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they are more likely to be disturbed or distracted by whatever is going on around them in the environment. So, it is advisable for such students that their classes should be in a place where minimum levels of distractions are there, minimum levels of outside noises are there, so that they are not disturbed. Now we come to some technological requirements which should be there in a school. So with the coming or advent of technology, there are a lot of resources which are there for different kinds of children and their needs. So ICT for compensation uses, first of all we will be discussing, there are different kinds of uses which the technology can be put into. So one of the foremost is the compensation uses. That means technology is being used to compensate for some kind of a disability which is there. For example, reading. Somebody who cannot read can take recourse to or can use some of the reading tools. Now these reading tools can perform different kinds of functions. For example, text to speech converter softwares. There are different softwares which are available in the market, which we will not be discussing because of reasons. So we have, but there are different softwares available. So text to speech converter softwares, optical character reader, or known as the OCR softwares, again used for converting text to digital format. Then talking or audio books are available these days. Text files to audio softwares are also available. Then there are certain writing tools also which are available for children or students who cannot write. Say somebody with say dyslexia or dysgraphia, or some with locomotor disability or cerebral palsy. So they can make use of these softwares, organizational softwares, which convert ideas in the form of a concept map into text. So the student will be required to draw or convert his or her ideas on a kind of a concept map with connections and interconnections, and the software will convert it into a text. On screen word banks to convert speech to text to perform written tasks. So I mean, the student is speaking and the software is kind of converting that speech into written material. Word prediction to help with spelling and word completion, and also to improve vocabulary. Now, there are softwares which are available which give words to the students so that they are able to write nicely with using good vocabulary and words, and also to reduce or minimize the grammatical errors. Word recognition to convert voice into messages, texts, emails, etc. without any mistakes. So these kinds of softwares where it's voice recognition, where the voice or whatever we are saying, that is simultaneously converted into texts or emails or messages by using certain specific softwares. Portable word processors or note takers for taking notes. For students, there may be some students for whom it becomes very difficult to be taking notes in the class. So these word processors or note takers can be there, which can immensely help the students in their requirements. Then there are certain generic technological tools which are available, say pen or pencil grips for writing. Some students for whom it is difficult for them to hold pencil, say for example children with some locomotor problems or children with cerebral palsy may find it difficult to hold the pencil. So grips are there, grammar and spelling checkers are there, calculators, talking clocks, voice output measuring devices are there. Then we have the magnifiers, screen magnifiers, braille large print books are there to help out children with visual problems. So children with very you can say low eyesight or with very less amount of vision, say 2%, 3%, 10% vision, they can use magnifiers which really magnifies all the words, and they can read using these magnifiers and screen magnifiers, or braille scripts are there. Recorded lessons are there these days in audio and video format, depending upon the needs of the learners they can be used. Then we can also, these days we also have hearing aids which are prescribed by the doctors, or signaling devices for the hearing impaired. Then we can also make use of ICT for didactic purposes, that is for teaching purposes, and these days there is a lot of work going on with different ways in which technology can be used for teaching purposes. Say for example, this very lecture, this very you can say kind of a module again is a kind of ICT being used for teaching purposes. So we can have blended learning classrooms wherein technology and the teacher both are there, and they are and the teacher is making use of technology within the classroom to assist as well as to you can say augment the learning experiences of the students. So it's like, say, a teacher is there and a teacher is making use of some audiovisual film, or say use of a presentation, or use of some other any other kind of a technological tool in order to augment the learning experiences of students. There we have flipped classrooms. Flipped classrooms is a I mean teaching strategy wherein students are given topic which is to be discussed beforehand. They go through the material which is, say, it can be somewhere some videos are there online, or some kind of a material which is there online or in a digital format, and students go through that digital formats, all of that material. They come to the class prepared with the material, and then in the class certain assignments or group activities or discussions, some activities are designed on the basis of what the students have learned or read from the material which has been distributed to them. Use of internet and you can say OERs, presentations, smart boards, etc. Now these are very widely used these days. Use of internet, almost everybody is making use of internet. The open educational resources, that is the OERs, are used, and there are so many agencies, they are trying to come out with very good educational resources for all students, for all age groups, for in all subject areas. And the Indian government is also coming out in Indian government has taken up this great initiative of having the Swayam platforms. Swayam platforms are there for all school subjects across all levels, and Swayam Prabha is there for all the teacher education courses. Then use for assessments. Technology is also being used for assessments. The tablets are there, and I mean the students are given online assignments and supposed to submit assignments also online, and assessments are done thereon. Online classes are there, forums are there, discussions are there, webinars are going on. So these are some of the new technological advances which are happening in the field of education. Use of tablets for instructional as well as assessment purposes. So these days in many schools, students are given tablets, and these tablets, so they don't have to bring their books and everything is, all the materials there in these tablets, and the students are supposed to be reading on those tablets, doing work on those tablets, I mean submitting the assignments also, and they're also assessed on the basis of their work done on the same tablets. Then there is another concept which is coming up, is the learning analytics. It is an upcoming field in which it is the measurement, collection, analysis and reporting of data about learners and their contexts for understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which learning happens. It is an upcoming field which can be beneficial for the teachers in understanding the learning pattern of their students. So it is basically data are collected and they are analyzed, and it gives the teachers a good insight into how their learners are learning, what are their shortcomings, what are the areas they need to improvise upon, what are the learning difficulties of the student. So it can be used to very good educational purposes. Now, this is the use of ICT for students is very beneficial. This is a resource, or this is a material which was given by UNESCO in the year 2006. General benefits of ICT: it enables greater learner autonomy. The learners can decide. Now these days, especially in situation like COVID-19, many schools and universities world over, they have uploaded their material online, and students are working online throughout the day in order to accomplish the specified tasks. So it gives learners a greater autonomy. It gives them power to do things at their own pace, at their own level. It unlocks the hidden potential for those with communication difficulties. It enables students to demonstrate achievement in ways which might not be possible with traditional methods. It enables the task to be tailored to suit individual skills and attitudes. Now say one student requires 2 days to accomplish a particular task, another student may require 4 days. So the student, they have this flexibility to progress at their own pace, and this leverage or this flexibility is provided by the ICT tools. Benefit for the students Computers can improve the independent access for students to education. Students with special educational needs are able to accomplish tasks working at their own pace. That is a very big advantage. In a general normal classroom, generally whatever we might say, at times the pace of the class is according to the needs of an average learner. So the learners who are above the average learners, they also suffer, and the learners who are below the average learner, they also suffer. But with ICT, these you can say limitations can be worked on. Visually impaired students using internet can access information along with their sighted peers. Students with profound and multiple learning disabilities can communicate more easily, as we were discussing with the various reading tools and the writing tools. Students using voice communication aids gain confidence and social credibility at school in their communities. Increased ICT confidence among students motivates them to use the internet at home for schoolwork and leisure interests. And ICT is also very beneficial for teachers and the non-teaching staff. It reduces the isolation for teachers working in special educational needs by enabling them to communicate electronically with colleagues, and it brings all the teachers together. There are invariably now there are online forums where all the teachers are communicating, they're discussing their issues, they're discussing their concerns, and they're also sharing their resources. So it's a great help for all the teachers, whether they are regular teachers or whether they are teachers, they are special education teachers. Now let us try to discuss about the pedagogical and attitudinal preparedness of teachers and other people. Now we may have, or a school may have, all the infrastructural requirements. A school may be very well equipped with all the ICT resources, but until and unless the people are prepared, until and unless the teachers are prepared to organize and and they are in a better frame of work to accept inclusion in its very philosophy and principles, everything is going to fall flat. So a school with all the technological advanced facilities, and a school with very high you can say infrastructural facilities, but if it does not work on the attitudes and perceptions of the teachers, if the teachers are not prepared, nothing is going to work. And another school where there are limited number of say technological equipment is there, and infrastructure wise also not very good, or very bare basic minimum things are there, but if the teachers are prepared well, that school can contribute to a large extent in being an inclusive school. So preparing teachers, preparing staff, preparing administrators, and preparing even the students is very crucial in making a school a good inclusive school. So developing positive attitude among teachers and students is extremely important. Until and unless that is done, nothing is going to work in making school a truly inclusive school. And we also need to work on values inculcation, values like democracy, values like empathy, values and universal human values, and the philosophy of inclusion, which actually states that there is no reason why should students be discriminated against each other. Why should some students be left excluded? When we are talking of socially excluded students, like socially disadvantaged groups, say certain castes or classes, or say linguistic groups, or say some some religious groups, or you are talking of children with special needs, when all of these are inherently a part of our society, why shouldn't they be inherently a part of our education system also? So you can say the teachers have to be oriented towards the philosophy of inclusion and how inclusion has evolved over a period of time. Then sensitization of not only the teachers but administrative and all the support staff also, because that is also very important. If the teachers are doing their job very well and the administrators or the managers, things are not told to them, or they are not sensitized towards these issues, they may do things, or they may pass certain comments, or they may do some things which may not be beneficial for children at all. So training of teachers is required on all of these aspects: development of positive attitude and sensitization towards the needs of all children, diverse children with all specific needs. Pedagogical practices and planning for inclusive classrooms. So, what different pedagogical alternatives are there? What methods of teaching are there? What instructional methods are there? What assessment methods are there? Teachers have to be taught about all of those different methods which are available to them, how to take care of needs of different students, and also the teachers have to be told about what different diverse kinds of learners can be there in their classes, what can be their specific needs, what can be their specific requirements, and what specific problems they may have, and how to take care of them, and in case there is a problem, where in what way they can proceed, in what ways they should be, or situations in which they should be approaching the special educator, situations in which they should be approaching the school counselor, situations in which they should be approaching their you can say the person they are reporting to, whether it is the principal or the headmaster or headmistress, etc. So, they should, these kinds of things have to be told to the teachers, they have to be, proper orientation needs to be given to the teachers. Knowledge of various disabilities and other disadvantaged groups and their specific requirements, as I already discussed. Knowledge of various accommodations, adaptations and interventions. These were some of the, all of these have been discussed in the previous section. So, knowledge of all of these have to be given to the teachers. When to consult a specialist has to be told to them, when to call the parents has to be told to them, and accommodative assessment practices orientation has to be done. If they are teaching differently, if they are working on individualized educational plans, if they are working on you can say individualized instruction, how can they assess, or how can assessments be designed around children with special needs. Flexible curriculum and subject choices need to be given to the students. So, curriculum shouldn't be considered as something sacrosanct and which cannot be changed. It is basically meant for the benefits of the students, and the school needs to think that yes, it can be modified, or it should be modified based on the needs of the learners. And subject choices, students should be free to choose the subjects. Say CBSE gives a whole lot of choices to the students, to the schools to choose the subjects they would want to teach in their schools, but many a times schools choose not to teach certain specific subjects, or they choose not to give some subject combinations. For example, most of the schools will not give physics along with music, whereas the boards will not have any problem in a student choosing geography, history and physics, but schools put on their own restrictions. So, those kinds of restrictions should not be there, and also the school should be providing academic as well as vocational subjects which can be there. Scholarships and other facilities to the needy students should also be there. Children friendly educational materials and their availability should be there in the school. Options to choose between academic and vocational subjects, especially for children with special needs. Fully equipped resource rooms should be there with all the technological facilities which can be there in order to augment the learning experiences of different students. Diverse range of co-curricular activities should be there so that all children can be accommodated. So, many a times we may see that like when co-curricular activities are being conducted, say sports are being done. So, there will be many students who are not in a position to run or participate in some activities. So, a range of activities should be there so that all students are able to participate in something or the other. If somebody is not able to participate in sports, the student can participate in something else. If somebody is not able to participate in art and painting, can participate in something else. So, depending upon the needs and limitations and requirements of the students, different ranges of co-curricular activities have to be designed by the school. Now, let us talk about the school's policy. The policies of the schools have to be absolutely clear. The philosophy of the school, the aims and goals and practices should be very clear, and they should commensurate with the inclusive practices. So, the school needs to decide in what way they are going to implement the inclusive practices and what measures they are going to take in order to implement those practices. The role and responsibility of each member of the school should be there so that there is clarity, there are no clashes. Expected behavior from each and every member, that is teachers, students, the administrative staff, the support staff. So, expected behavior needs to be chalked out so that there is clarity on the roles and responsibilities of each and every person. Conflict resolution mechanisms should be there. In every organization where there are so many people, conflicts are bound to be there. So in case of a conflict, what should be the course of action, that should also be highlighted well in advance. Positive environment should be there. So if environment flows, or there is general environment, if the environment is cordial, that cordiality will be prevalent among the teachers also, that cordiality is going to be there among the students also, that cordiality will be there among the relationships between the teacher and students also. So a positive kind of a learning environment needs to be there for the enrichment and development of all within the school. And these policies should be in a written format for a better clarity. Let us not assume that people will understand things on their own. It does not happen that way. Orientation to the new students and teachers should be there, proper kind of an orientation in order to make them understand the philosophy of the school, the aims and objectives of the school, the ethos of the school, the principles which they are following, so that there is clarity. Maintaining of discipline and classroom practices should be there. Now these are all the practices which can help a school in becoming a truly inclusive school, and it can really be a very positive step in our society, that if all the schools decide to become inclusive schools, so that our society together becomes a cohesive and inclusive society. Now let us try to check your progress. You can answer the following questions. How can a school be a truly inclusive school? Think of the various schools you have been to, your own school, your teaching practice school maybe, schools of your siblings etc., or cousins maybe. How many of these schools you think are truly inclusive in nature? And substantiate your answer with evidences that you have observed. In what ways you can say these schools are inclusive, in what ways you can say that these schools are not inclusive. So you need to give minimum 5 observations for each. Discuss the various infrastructural and technological requirements for inclusive school. Enumerate various measures the school must take to prepare its teachers, students, administrative and support staff for making school a safe place for all the students. So that was all for this particular session. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.